Hey fly tyers, Darren here. Welcome back to another fly tying tutorial. Today we're going to be tying a pattern I call the Rusty Olive Emerger. So we got a little bit of a ginger hackle up top, and underneath that it's supported by an olive CDC feather. And on the back end, for subsurface, we've got a peacock quill fortified with a little bit of UV resin. So there's not a lot of components to the fly, but there's a couple tricky steps that I'll walk you through. Don't forget to leave a comment on the video and I'll enter you into the next draw for flies. Alright, let's have a look at the material list and get started. Alright, let's get a fresh hook into the vise. Today I'm going to be using a Mustad C49S and we're tying a size 12, but I'll tie this down to size 16 or an 18. So if you don't have a C49S hook, you can use something similar, and I like to have something that has a nice curve in the back, so any kind of scud hook will do very well, and something with a straight eye. So for thread we're going to be using Ultra Thread 70 denier, and this is the rusty brown. So we'll start the thread just a little back behind the eye. Want to try and keep the body fairly thin. So the first thing we're going to need is a stripped peacock quill. So there's a couple different ways we can do this. You can chemically treat it with a little bit of diluted bleach, and that'll help strip the fibers off, or you can do what I'm doing here and just using the end of a pencil eraser and just stroke against the grain of the barbules and you'll strip those off. It takes a little bit of work to get them off. Another thing you can do is just use your thumbnail and kind of drag it along there as well, but I find you tend to put a little bit too much stress on the quill and you can break it a little bit easier. So we'll just make sure that we kind of want to try and pull all the little fibers off there. And you probably want to flip it over in your hand just to make sure that you get both sides of that. You get a nice clean quill. And when you wrap that, you can see a bit of color difference along the length. When you look at it straight on, it looks fairly monotone, but as you wrap it, you'll see the differences in color, and it gives a nice segmented look. So we'll wrap that in, and we're going to bind that down with touching turns. We're going to take that all the way into the bend. Take that as far as you want, down to the hook point if you really want to, and then we'll come back. So the nice thing about using a peacock quill is you've got quite a bit of length to play with. So we're just going to start by gently wrapping that. You don't want to pull too hard on this first wrap, as it can be a little bit fragile. So, and as we wrap this up, we're going to make sure that we have touching turns, just edge to edge, and you can kind of see the difference in color developing as we wind the peacock quill up the hook shank. So we're going to wind that up basically up to the point where we started our thread. And then once we have that tied off, at the front we're going to coat this with a little bit of UV resin. I'm just going to use a bone dry for this, a nice thin resin. If you don't have bone dry, you can use a different one. Just make sure that you just apply a thin coat on there. So we'll take a little bit of the bone dry and we'll brush that. Make sure that you get on top and the bottom of the quill, and that'll really help with the durability of the fly as well. And we'll just hit that with the UV light for a few seconds. Make sure that we cure it really well. You just want to be careful you don't get any of the UV resin on the thread when you turn it upside down. You'll cause a little bit of a defect in the body of the fly. Alright, next we're going to take a CDC hackle and we're going to put it through a Piscator magic tool. So I've got this is an olive, marked Piscator CDC in olive. And I think this is number 8 is the color code on that. So we're going to take a nice long feather and we're going to put that through the magic tool here. So as you can see, we've got two different parts for the magic tool. We've got a stage and a clip. So what we're going to do is we're going to kind of brush those fibers. You want them coming out straight off of the stem, and then you're going to pull both sides and push it through the stage, and then we just clip off the back and the front. And we're going to open our clip and we're going to slide it down, make sure that we capture all those fibers, and then you want to take it out of the stage and you want to hold the clip very tightly. This is probably the part where the fibers get pulled out. And then we'll just trim the stem away, and we've got a nice thin piece of CDC to wrap in. Alright, so this is probably the most difficult part of the fly. We just want to take a pin or a needle, and we're going to split that thread. So this is the advantage of using the UTC, because it's a nice flat thread. And so for this, we just want to open that up. And basically we're creating a dubbing loop. And if you have trouble with splitting the thread, you can definitely create a dubbing loop to catch the CDC fibers. So we're just going to tip those in and let the loop catch those. And then what we want to do is we want to start spinning our bobbin. And then once we have quite a bit of spin in there, we will let go and let the CDC wrap up. So we'll just spin the bobbin. See there? And then when we let that go, you can see the CDC turns into basically it's a CDC hackle without the thick stem. So you're not building up a lot of bulk. So then we're just going to palmer this like I would with, say, a marabou feather or a hackle feather. And you can kind of wrap over itself a little bit. Just advance that a little forward each time and make sure you stroke all those fibers back so that they don't get caught under the thread wraps. And because we're going to be tying this as an emerger, we can push those back forward and kind of help create a bit of a surface that the fly can sit on. And I don't mind having these extra long straggly bits that kind of help catch little pieces of air. So we're going to take a barred ginger hackle. This one's nice, got some nice dark patches in the middle, not quite cree, but it's got more or less the same colors in cree, I suppose. We're just going to stroke those fibers out, and we're going to strip a few off the bottom. That's going to be our tie-in point. And when I tie this in, I tie it with the shiny side out, because I want these hackle fibers to lay backwards so that they can help catch the water tension if the CDC takes on a little bit of water, and then you've kind of like a backup to help the fly stay afloat. So we just bent that stem back just to make sure that we got that hackle locked in. Just a half hitch for insurance. And then we're just going to start palmering the hackle. This is a whiting saddle hackle that I'm using. Get quite a bit of length. I can probably tie about 6 or 7 of these flies out of a single hackle stem. We'll do a few wraps, 4 or 5 wraps is plenty, and then we'll catch our hackle. And we want to fold that hackle back and then wrap over top of that, just to make sure that it's really locked in there. Form a nice, neat little head, and we're going to whip finish that. And then for the extra hackle, you can either clip that, or if you hold it tightly, you can snap it off. And because we pushed it back and secured it, that should be fine. So if you give it a quick tug, it'll break off and you don't have to worry about cutting any of the fibers. There you go, that's the rusty olive merger, and I've got quite a number of these in my box already, so I'm going to be testing these out a little bit more this year. Tied a few of these for last season and did quite well, so I'm anxious to see if it continues its streak. Hey fly tiers, thanks for stopping by and checking out my fly tying videos. If you enjoyed the video and want to show your support, hit the thumbs up and share it to your social networks. I hope you consider subscribing to the channel, and if you do, be sure to hit the bell icon to get notifications on my latest fly patterns, tips, and reviews. If you have a question or comment, leave a message below. You'll also be entered into the next draw for some of the flies I tie and a few stickers. Until next time, this is Darren saying, keep a hook in your vise. Cheers.